Good morning. And with the Switch Lite being released today, as I'm recording this, I thought it was a good time to go back over the Switch and talk about its pros and cons. Because those of you who follow my channel know that when it first came out, and before it first came out, I was talking about it being an abject failure. And like a lot of other people, I was completely wrong on that, because the Nintendo Switch has turned out to be completely the opposite of an abject failure. It's been a roaring success. Nevertheless, some of the things I thought would lead to its demise are true. The fact is that in terms of power, it is and was underpowered. And some games, we are seeing this. You know, it's got poor graphics in some games, and some games have extremely low frame rate. You could talk about that in terms of optimization, and we see this happen with other consoles as well. But it's going to be exacerbated with the Switch because it is running on old tech. The Tegra X1 is getting rather long in the tooth, and so this is only going to get worse for the Switch as time goes on. Storage-wise, I said at the time it was ridiculous that it only released with 32 gig of storage, and that still applies. Many games now that you buy are requiring an SD card just in order to be installed. And I've got a 400 gig SD card in my Switch. And, you know, as time goes on, you're going to need a bigger card, and they're not cheap. The 720p screen is something that I wasn't sure about at the time. I didn't make a big deal about that, and you know, I think 720p is perfectly adequate for a handheld. It's not as nice as the OLED on my Samsung S9 Plus, and it's not even as bright or vibrant as the OLED on the early PS Vitas, but it is a higher resolution than the early PS Vitas, and it does look good. And it's a plastic screen, which has its pros and cons. It's less likely to smash, but it is more likely to scratch. And some have scratched because of the way the dock was designed. So there's some issues with build quality there as well. We've got the Joy-Con has had drift as well. And some people have reported that the Joy-Con connections are getting loose, and some people have found that their Joy-Cons are clipping on and off without pressing the buttons because they wear loose, which is not particularly good. And I noticed I noted in a previous video that Ben Hecht said that the Joy-Cons had some of the cheapest components he'd ever seen in a controller. The D-pad is pretty bad as well, and it should have been a real D-pad, but obviously there were problems there, because if you're going to use the Joy-Cons as independent controllers, you need to use that as buttons as well. So it's a compromise, isn't it? And you know, I think it's the best they could have done in circumstances. The Pro controller is much better and is, well, it's actually pretty good to use. So I actually like the Pro controller. I wouldn't use the Joy-Cons as individual controllers if you paid me, quite frankly. And while we're talking about build quality, the kickstand is crap. It's not fit for purpose, and they should have had a double kickstand or something like that to make it stand better, because it's got a tendency to fall over, and you don't want it falling over and damaging your console. The dock, as I've already mentioned, is pretty poor as well, and it can scratch the screen. It's not scratched mine. I've got a screen protector on mine, but it can. And that's just unforgivable. I just don't understand why they would design it in such a way that it could actually scratch the screen. And why can't you just plug the console into a TV? Why do you need a dock? Obviously, with the new Switch Lite, that's not going to be an issue because it doesn't plug into a TV at all. And you can't use it as a home console. You can only use it as a portable, so it becomes moot in that circumstance. So yeah, and obviously the Switch Lite will have a proper D-pad, which is going to be good. But we've still got the issue with ergonomics there, both on the current Switch and the Switch Lite. Playing handheld, which you're going to have to with the Switch Lite, is bloody uncomfortable unless you use a third-party add-on. You've got the Satisfy Switch Grip and the Switch Grip Pro, which is coming out, and I think they're going to be releasing stuff for the Switch Lite as well. And then we've got the Hori Split Pad Pro, which is only going to work with the standard Switch. And Skull & Co. do a similar thing to Satisfy as well. So the hardware on the Switch is a bit of a mixed bag, and I actually talked about this in a previous video where I said that as a portable I thought the Switch was a very good console, but as a home console it leaves a fair bit to be desired, primarily because of the storage and power. And while we're talking about leaving a lot to be desired, we've got to talk about software and services, because the online service, such as it is crap. It still is crap. We waited ages for it, and it came out, and it was rubbish, and it hasn't really improved very much. The whole situation with online saving, it is a bit of a joke, because it doesn't apply to all games, and that makes it almost impossible to transfer from one console to another. Good luck trying to get all your saves onto the new Switch Lite. And you can do that because there is a data transfer option, but that's only a one-time process. That's not going to allow you to have multiple switches and, log on to one Switch, play a game, go to another Switch, log on to that one and carry on playing your game like you can with the Xbox. With the Xbox, you log on to a machine, you load up your game, it syncs to the cloud, you play the game. You go to another console, you even go to a PC with supported games, you log on there, and you can carry on where you left off. Doesn't matter whether it's your console, someone else's console, as long as you're logged on, you can play your games. There's no achievements with the Switch, which I find bizarre. Even phone games now have achievements, so there's no sort of meta with the Switch that allows you to track your progress against your friends. And I know some people don't care about that, but some people do. And I do think it helps to make the experience better for many people. Voice chat's still a complete bloody mess and is very piecemeal, so there's still a problem there. And we've got no video capture for most games still. I went onto the Nintendo website because, I don't use video capture on the Switch. I've got a capture device that I use. But when I went onto their website and looked this up, it says video capture is available for consoles with system menu version 4 or higher and is compatible with the following titles. And then it lists what? 1, 2, 3, 4 games. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, ARMS, Splatoon 2. More titles will become compatible in the future. And whether there are more titles now, I don't know. But even so, it's piecemeal. It's not a unified process. So I find that just utterly bizarre. I just don't understand what Nintendo are thinking there. But, it's Nintendo, so what do you expect? There's never going to be a virtual console. We can accept that now. Well, maybe not accept it, but we just have to get used to it. They have got NES and SNES games on the system if you subscribe to their online service. And, that's welcome, but it's not really sufficient, certainly not for me. And a lot of the NES games aren't particularly great. The library's not particularly great. And if they repeat that with the SNES games, then it's hardly a selling point, is it? We still haven't got very many apps. There's no Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, etc. I'm not sure about that. I think that could be seen as an advantage or a disadvantage because, you can see it that it's just a gaming console and you don't get distracted and go off and do other things like you do when you're on your phone or on your iPad or something. But it would be nice to see some apps or a few more apps. I think we've got YouTube now. Sorry, I nearly choke when I say YouTube these days because I know I make videos for YouTube, but YouTube winds me up. We've got no web browser, and that's another one that I would like to see on there. And maybe they've left that off because, well, basically it can give exploits, but then people have managed to exploit the Switch anyway. There's a thriving homebrew community for the Switch. Breaking in me grand teeth here, causing me problems talking. But yeah, it would be nice to see a web browser, and I don't really see why there isn't one. The other thing as well is, given the number of games that are on the Switch now, it seems pretty difficult to navigate your way around them when you've got a lot. It's not too bad for me because I haven't got a huge number of games. I've got a fair few, but it's not ridiculous. But the more you get, the more difficult it is to navigate around. And it would be nice if you could group your games like you can on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox. It's just a little thing, but I would like to see that. And while we're talking about the games, the store is overrun with some utter dross. Then again, that's pretty much the same for all stores ranging from the Xbox, the PlayStation through to Steam, which is probably one of the worst ones. And while we're talking about games, that is one area where the Switch currently excels. I mean, games are coming thick and fast on the system, and that can only be welcomed. And that, to me, latterly, certainly, not in the early days, because if you look early on, it launched with Zelda and not much else, really. I found myself playing Fast RMX all the time. So it didn't launch with a large number of games, but since then, the games have just come thick and fast. And I think as it's become more popular, popularity breeds popularity, success breeds success. The more sales the console's had, the more third parties have looked at the console and seen it as a viable option. So now it's a really viable option. You've got a lot more third parties who are trying to make games for the platform. And that can only be a good thing. It's really good to see so many great games coming to the platform. And it's nice for me to have something that I can take on the go with me, take on holiday with me, and take some damn good games with me. I know I should probably be sitting by the pool or going out on the beach, but I hate sitting by the pool and going out on the beach, so I'd rather be playing my games or reading a book or something like that. It does concern me that some of the games are coming out only as digital releases, and I know we get this on other consoles, but when you've got something like Grid coming out as a digital release, so I heard the other day, and not getting a physical release, and it might do down the line, I don't know. That concerns me a bit, and some of that might be due to the cost because of the cartridges, and it would probably be required to be on a fairly large cartridge. So I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what's going on with that, but I don't like the idea of digital only games. Certainly not anything other than indies, and this is a bigger issue, and I'm going off topic somewhat. But digital only games can disappear. We've seen this with plenty of games over the years, and you just can't get them anymore. And I don't want to find myself in a situation where I can't get the games anymore because they only came out digitally. At least with physical games, you can still go out and buy them, even if it's only secondhand, and you can still track them down. But this is a bigger problem, and it doesn't just apply to Nintendo. So the Switch is a bit of a mixed bag. And in some ways, I think the Switch Lite, moving forward, is in some ways a better proposition for me. I know it's not for everybody. I know I've spoken to some people who play the Switch almost exclusively in docked mode. But I'm not one of those people. I tend to play the Switch on the go. And I think most people do. I think the stats show that most people play it on the go. So for the future, I think it was a great move by Nintendo to release the Switch Lite, and I think it's going to sell hotcakes. I do think, though, that as we move into next year, and certainly towards the tail end of next year, it's going to get difficult for the Switch, certainly in terms of third party. I think some of the third party games that are going to be coming out for the PS5 and Xbox, whatever it's going to be called, just won't go on the Switch with all the will in the world. They're just not going to be able to shoehorn them on there because just the graphic files alone are going to take up such an enormous amount of space. So that's going to be a problem for it moving forward. And I do think that the Switch is going to be requiring a revision, another revision other than the Switch Lite. I think we're going to need the Switch Pro. And, that major bump in power could give it another boost again. How that Switch Pro will split the install base is is interesting. But we've already got that now with the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite is going to split the install base because some games simply aren't going to run on the Switch Lite, and there's lists online that will show you that. But, you know, I think it would be good to see a Switch Pro. And I think Nintendo are probably looking into that. I think we've heard rumours about that for a long time now, and I wouldn't be at all surprised we will see something next year. Maybe the year after, I don't know. But anyway, that's what I think about the Switch. That's my sort of retrospective, if you like, of the Switch. I do think it's a mixed bag. I do think some of the things that made me think it would fail still apply. Power, capacity, build quality in some areas. There's still problems. But nevertheless, the Switch has gone from strength to strength, and it is a fun little console. It is, if you like, the little console that could. And, you know, long may it continue. It's good to see Nintendo doing well, as long as they don't, you know, keep up with some of their other shenanigans, but that's for another video. Anyway, that's what I think about it. I think it's interesting to see the Switch doing well. I think it's great to see the Switch Lite, and I'll be picking up one of those. And yeah, I just think it's an interesting little console, and I'm glad I was wrong. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this one, give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. And come in, as I say, and we can discuss this. And you can tell me if you like the Switch, if you don't like the Switch, if you think the Switch Lite's a good idea, do you want to see a Switch Pro, all the usual stuff. But in the meantime, I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.